I'm your host, Elizabeth, and this is For the Talkers and Happy Thursday. I'm your host, Elizabeth, and today is an amazing episode that I'm so glad you decided to listen to. I myself have been so excited to record this and listen back to this episode. I know I will come back to it many times. Meeting up with Emilie and getting to know her literally was meant to be. I had posted some question boxes on my story on Instagram to see what kind of topics you guys were interested in and looking to know more about. And more than one person had brought up postpartum. And literally the next day, I connected with Emilie. This episode was just meant to be. I had such a great time recording with Emilie. She so smart, so thoughtful, and had a really, really great advice. And she also shared her experience with going through postpartum. That is hard. I've said postpartum far too many times. She shares her experience with postpartum and she actually has a whole book on it, but we will get more into that. Really, this episode was just super fun, and Emilie was so kind in answering some of your guys' questions and really just giving a lot of advice, tips, and tricks, and sharing some of the things that she does herself as a mother and what she did going through postpartum. So, thank you all for listening. I have linked her website below if you're interested in looking more into what she has to offer. And if you are wanting to get her book, I will link that below as well. It's in my cart already to purchase. So let me give you a little more of Emilie's background. Dr. Emilie Wilson is a naturopathic doctor, acupuncturist, author, and new mother. Her clinical background is in women's cardiometabolic and hormone health. After a traumatic childbirth in late 2022, she entered a very difficult postpartum time, including struggles with postpartum depression and anxiety. She knew that if she could struggle so much as a naturopathic doctor, then too many other new parents were too. So she wrote a book to guide expecting parents to create their postpartum self-care plan in pregnancy to set them up for the best postpartum experience possible. Dr. Wilson intends to empower new parents to have the best postpartum time possible so they can focus on what matters, their health, and their relationship with their new baby. So join me in welcoming Emilie. Hello, Emilie.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you for having
Hi.
me.
Of course. I'm so glad you made it. I've really been looking forward to this episode. I know everyone's gonna just love hearing more about postpartum. I, as someone who wants to be a mother one day, I'm excited to hear more. So it should be really great. Why don't you go ahead and start with your happy, funny, sad moment from the week?
Okay. And I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to think about this because I do not do enough self-reflection. I feel like I both do a lot of, like, I journal every day. And yet I was like, gosh, what was like a funny thing that happened? But I've got it. The happy for me for sure is upcoming. So I am going on my first girls trip in over 2 years next week. This week, actually. So I'm leaving
Wow.
morning. Yeah. And I'm so excited about it. The last time I went was when I was pregnant with my daughter, and same group of girls, and I just haven't seen them since. And so I'm just so excited to kind of feel like a person and catch up,
Yeah,
take a breath away from my day to day. So that's for sure.
totally.
Yeah.
Awesome. Where are you guys going?
We're going to Esalen in Big Sur, California.
Nice.
It's going to be beautiful. And it's right on the coast. I've never been, but I've heard
Yeah,
like magical things about it. So I'm excited.
awesome. I hope it's super fun.
Thank you. Yeah. I think I'm sure I'll end up posting some photos on Instagram of it. So,
Totally.
okay. So funny would be for me, this was another one I was like, okay, let me think something funny. Uh,
Right? That's me every week. I'm like, I know I laughed at least one time this week, and I just can't.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I'm somebody who loves comedy. Like I love shows that make me laugh. I have watched The Office far too many times. It's comforting and it makes me laugh. But the story that came to my mind from this week was actually last night we went to dinner, my whole family. We went to dinner. My daughter was there and somebody did something really funny at the table. I don't even remember what it was. It was just silly. And she's almost 2. She sees everybody at the table laughing, and she just like starts laughing because everybody else is like, she doesn't even know what's funny, but she's just
No.
laughing so hard. And
Yeah.
it's like so cute and so funny. She's just trying to figure out how to be a little person, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, totally. It's like, I see everyone else doing this, so I'm gonna give it a try too.
yeah. And that made me laugh. It made me so happy. So that was for
I
sure
love
my
it. That's
yeah. And then sad, it just finished. And I know you're a book reader.
yeah.
And so I don't know if you've read this book yet, The Midnight Library.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I just like discovered it. I found it. I read it in Saturday night. By Sunday morning, like Sunday afternoon, I was finished with it. It was so good.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, this is perfect for my sad, even though it's not really sad at all. But um when she finally like finds her life, the life where she was so happy, and
Yeah.
then she's starting to feel herself like being pulled away from it, I was just like heartbroken for her. But
Yeah.
at the end it's not really sad because she does get this whole new lease in life, but that
Right.
that pulled at my heart a little bit.
Yeah. Overall, like you're saying, like it ended very nicely, but it was a pretty sad book. Like definitely scenes and parts where you're like, okay, like this is kind of a lot, kind of heavy and just sad.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot there.
Yeah, definitely. No, I've definitely read that. We did that for book club kind of a while ago and yeah, everyone really enjoyed it. So, okay, well that's perfect. My sad for the week is kind of silly, but me and my partner went to the gym and she goes to the gym like 5 times a week and I go like once a month. so so we went together and I was following her lead and I should not have done that because I like everything I've done today. I'm like, ouch, oh, ouch. And I know that day 2 is the worst. So I'm just preparing to be absolutely so sore tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes. My funny is my birthday was last week and I asked my 5-year-old niece because I turned 22 and she loves Taylor Swift. So I was like, well, you should do a dance to a Taylor Swift song for my birthday. And she actually did. Like, I just kind of said that. And nope, she totally did. We got there. She was like, I have my dance ready for you. And it was super, super cute. And she just danced around for a couple minutes, but it was super funny and she's just so adorable and has the best little memory ever. Like if you tell her something, she'll remember it. So that was
Oh,
cracking me up. And then so my birthday was last week, but then we have a lot of family, so we kind of have to spread stuff out. And so just yesterday, I was able to have kind of a birthday dinner with my in-laws, and it was just so fun. It was a perfect day. I love hanging out with them. Our granny, I didn't give her a lot of direction on what I wanted for dinner, and she made these like most yummy sandwiches, so that was perfect. And then my sister-in-law got me this like watermelon scented scrub and I just could not stop smelling it the whole time I was there. I was like, what is in this? Because it smells so good. And like I gotta go home and like use it. And so I was like, that's definitely gonna be my happy for the week. So overall pretty good, I'd say.
that's awesome. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, that's perfect. So I want you to just kind of introduce yourself to the listeners here, kind of give us a little bit of your background, your experience. We're going to be talking a lot about postpartum today. So
Mhm.
just kind of give us some more general info on that.
Yeah, for sure. So, I am I don't know, by training, I guess I'd say a naturopathic doctor, an acupuncturist. And I tried a lot of things out and finally settled in this really wonderful space for me of women's cardiometabolic and hormone health. And that was wonderful. And that kind of was where I thought, maybe I would land for like, that would be like my career. And then I got pregnant in 2022 And I was inspired to write a pregnancy wellness book. And then I had this amazing pregnancy, and I chose to have a home birth, and ended up having a traumatic home birth. And that started me down this road of postpartum that I was nowhere near prepared for. I had no idea that I should have expected it. And I really struggled. And it was a long time kind of trying to get my bearings again after that. And I realized a couple of things because of that. I realized that if I was struggling like this, then, with me with a formal medical training, then obviously a lot of other people are struggling too. People are dying and they're losing their lives and they're losing their happiness and they're losing their health and they're losing their relationships with their kids and their partners because of it. And there's so much we can do. And the other thing I realized was that I needed to switch the topic of my book from being a pregnancy wellness book, because there frankly are more than enough of those on the market anyway, to being a postpartum wellness book. And because that was really not only what my experience taught me, but it also is really the hole that I saw that needed to be filled the most. And so I am definitely a learner and a scientist and a researcher at heart. So I just dove into the research and tried to understand what is the science saying right now? What do we know the most about what is actually helping people come back from, all of the cardiometabolic stuff that happens in pregnancy, like gestational diabetes and hypertension and increased risk of heart disease, increased risk of stroke. And what are they saying about women recovering from, thyroid disease? What about hormone health? And then, of course, what about postpartum depression and anxiety, which we know now is more like perinatal depression and anxiety, because a lot of people in pregnancy are feeling that way too. For me, luckily, physically, my health was okay. It was pretty good. I did develop anemia because as a side effect of my daughter's birth, but for me, it was a lot more about the postpartum depression and anxiety that I really struggled with. I didn't have it in pregnancy, so I really had no idea. I think everybody knows it's like this like shadow or question in the back of your mind, but you're just like, at least in my case, I was like, I'll just cross that bridge when I come to it. I'll deal with it when I get there. So I was totally unprepared.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love that you brought up, because I had that thought. I'm like, how if a literal doctor didn't know, like the rest of us are just set up so poorly. So I just thought that was great that you brought that up, of like, it is just not shared enough. It's not explored enough. It's not talked about enough. So that's really great. So first, I asked my audience for some questions specifically for you. So first, we'll ask those and then get into a little bit more about postpartum. So the first question I have for you, what are some tips that you have to get into a routine more easily with the unpredictability of a baby schedule?
Yeah, this is a great question, because I mean, it shows me that your people are thinking about, what is my life going to look like after the baby comes? Any thought and energy you can put into that before the baby comes or even after is amazing. And the reality of the situation is that we can prepare as much as we want. And that's what my whole book is about. It's about creating that postpartum self-care plan in pregnancy. So it's all about preparing. But then I think that the flip side to that is that also know that everything's going to change, and nothing is going to go according to plan, and that's totally okay. There are a lot of really great strategies that people can, set themselves up for. Everything from, healing from the birth, whether it's a vaginal birth or a C-section, to preparing like meal planning beforehand or asking people for meals. And this is just a little side note, but the research says that the Mediterranean diet is the most effective way for postpartum people to not only kind of get back their physical health, but also get back their mental and emotional wellness. And for a lot of people, this is a big thing, but like losing the baby weight, the Mediterranean diet does all of it. It's very supportive on all those levels. So meal planning, yeah, Big one for sure. Any preparation that you can do as far as like your physical comfort, also really important. I know that we're talking about routines here, and I think that the reason that this popped into my head is because the only routines that I think that a new parent can really count on are the routines that involve caring for the baby and then caring for yourself, right? Like everything's going to change. It's going to look different from day to day. And so the routines I think really become about listening to what your baby, trying to learn what your baby needs, and then also trying to listen to yourself and your body and understand, what is my body telling me that I need right now? Because it's so easy for a lot of women and a lot of new parents to just kind of ignore themselves because they're so focused on the baby. But what we really have to do more than ever is create that space for ourselves. And so maybe it's not a routine, maybe it's more like building a habit muscle, but I think it's really, really important to know that, like, have a lot of grace with any routine that you plan for or that you set up,
Mhm.
but know that your non-negotiables are going to be taking care of your baby, but they also have to be taking care of yourself.
Totally. Yeah, I think those are some great tips, really. Like you said, like it's a muscle. You kind of gotta work on it and flex it. And that's a great point that if you can kind of do some of those things beforehand, and then when all the unpredictability does hit, at least you have, a few of those things. But I like that too, always remembering you as mom are still a key, player. It's not just baby. That's great.
Yeah.
So the next question I got was, what do you recommend for a postpartum mom trying to get a work or exercise routine back? Which we did kind of just answer that, but if you have any specifics for getting back into exercising or going back to work.
Yeah, I love this question too. And I think, just speaking from my experience, honestly, going back to work was so much harder than getting back into exercising because I just didn't want to leave my daughter. I was so heartbroken to leave her for a matter of like 8 to 9 hours a day, but it was awful. And I know that a lot of new parents have that experience too. So I know I'm not alone, that it's a very emotional thing returning to work. But for a lot of people too, it's kind of the flip side. They're so excited to go back to work and just have a few hours to kind of be on their own and be a person again, maybe not just a
Right.
mom or a dad. Um, so I think that I just, again, it always comes back to grace, like having some grace for yourself, going back to work. It's probably going to be, it might be a lot more emotional than you realize that it's going to be. Um, I didn't take enough time. I wish I had taken more time off. I gave myself, I was back in the office. Well, I was seeing patients virtually like 5 days after my daughter was born. I was back in the office within 2 weeks. It was not enough time. So I think that, again, making that plan is really important. Like, know that things will change, but make it anyway and give yourself that grace. When you're trying to figure out when you're going to go back to work, you can probably always go back sooner, but it's easier to go back sooner than it is to ask for additional time off. So see what kind of, maternity or parental leave you can get and give yourself that time and space, because you don't really, it's impossible to know how you're going to feel about life after the baby's here. And you're probably a little sleep deprived and you're, probably not feeling like yourself. So I'd say give yourself some grace. And for me, as far as exercise goes, it took a long time, because for me, recovering from the childbirth, it was hard to get back into exercise for sure. But it was also one thing that I've learned in my personal life as well, because before I met my daughter's dad, I lost about almost 40 pounds. Well, I lost almost 30 pounds at the time. And I did that by completely restructuring my head around exercise. So I already had the muscle in place, the mental muscle of like exercise is self-care. So it was easy for me to get back out and just go for walks, just do simple things like that for a really long time. I think, again, the main theme here is, if you take nothing else from this, just listen to your body, listen to what you are saying to yourself, listen to what your body's telling you. It'll tell you when it's ready for exercise. It'll tell you when it's ready for walks. It'll tell you when it wants food and what it wants. And so just give yourself that as much as you can.
Yeah, totally. That's a really great reminder. I think a lot of moms need to hear. So
Yeah.
that's great.
As like people, right? And as women, like we just, it's so easy. I don't know if you would relate to this. I totally do that. Like it's so easy for me to be like focused on everybody else in the room. Hey, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? And I think we can all benefit from just checking in with ourselves too. Like, how am I?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. No, I would dare say almost every woman can relate to that, at least to some extent in some situations, you know. Um, yeah, it's hard. It's hard. You always want to take care of other people. And I think part of that is just kind of natural. You just want to care for others. I
Yeah.
agree. So, this last question from a listener is how do you approach asking for help, slash, like knowing when you need to ask for help, knowing how you're feeling postpartum is out of the range of like maybe normal or natural?
Hmm. And this is such an important question because we are not equipped. New moms, pregnant people are not equipped with this information, and it's out there, but it's just not easily accessible. Um, so to be honest, I'm going to feel like it is. I tried to create this super comprehensive resource that has that information. It has a list of mental health red flags. It has a list of physical red flags. So, like, how do you know when you might need to call your doctor because you feel like there's something physically going on? When should you be taking your blood pressure if you had a history of high blood pressure? When should you be calling your doctor if there's something physically going on? And then mentally and emotionally, when should you be calling your doctor too? I mean, there again, the lists are out there. They're very clear, red flag lists, but they're just not like handed out at the doctor's office like they should be. I will say too, I think this is where family and partners become super, super essential because women can be having these conversations with their trusted people before the baby comes. They can and they should be having these conversations because, especially if she has a history of mental health stuff and is at all worried about it coming back, she knows what the symptoms are. We don't always know when we're falling down into the hole that we're falling down into it, but we usually know when we hit rock bottom, right? And we want to have as much support as we can so that we have somebody else kind of keeping an eye on us and saying, hey, I think there might be something going on, because it's one more opportunity for us to check in with ourselves and say, oh my God, is the anxiety or the depression coming back? Because again, we don't always know it in the moment.
Yeah, that's great. Remembering to have those check ins every now and then. Okay, where am I at? Because, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely all too true. You don't realize until you're like, oh, and we're back. And we're here again.
Yeah. And that's why, again, I think support is one of the most essential pieces to having a better postpartum experience. It's so easy to isolate because you just become so focused on your baby. And again, even to the detriment of focusing on yourself. So having those trusted people in your corner to just keep an eye on you and check in on you, so essential.
Yeah, totally. If you could kind of give one piece of advice to pre-motherhood, uh, I think you've given a lot of advice just barely, but if there's anything you would add to that of like just something to know before.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I have so much I could say. But I think so. I do a lot of research into the effects of like toxins and chemicals in our world. And so I know I'm totally switching gears here, but I think preconception care is so important. And just thinking about your health beforehand. And if there's one thing that I would encourage people who want to become pregnant to do before getting pregnant is just do a life assessment. Like, do you have a lot of toxins and chemicals kind of sneaking into your daily life? And do you have, are you somebody who maybe is eating more like processed foods than you should? And how can you like swap those out for cleaner products and cleaner food? And because the health effects of these toxins are so far reaching and they affect the baby, even in pregnancy. And then they also can be really detrimental to mom's recovery postpartum. So again, like just getting into a new habit, building that habit muscle of just kind of finding ways to have a cleaner lifestyle, I think is super, super, super important.
Yeah, I think that's great. So, kind of switching gears a little, because I realize I'm looking at my questions. I'm like, they're all advice and tips, and I want to know a little bit more of like specifically what you know and what you talk about in your book. So I want to get into a little bit of some of the misconceptions that either maybe you had yourself or you've noticed that other people have, and now having gone through it, you can kind of say, that's not correct.
Yeah, that's huge. I think for me, the number one thing, just thinking, I literally had this thought, I will cross that bridge when I come to it. Like I was doing so well in my pregnancy. I felt so good. Even at the end, I didn't feel like overly exhausted or drained or super, I was pretty happy. So I really thought, oh, I'll be okay. And I had planned my number one thing, my only plan for postpartum mental health support was placenta encapsulation. And then because of everything that happened in my daughter's birth, that just wasn't an option. So I couldn't have done it if I wanted to. And nobody talked to me about this. So nobody, like not my OBGYN, not my midwife. I had care coming from like the traditional Western world and then the midwifery world as well. Not one person on my care team was like, hey, what are you thinking about postpartum? How are you planning for that? What are your thoughts? What are your fears? And so I really learned that advocacy is a huge piece of what women need and what pregnant people need. They need it in the delivery room. They need it in their doctor's appointments, both pre-birth and post-birth. And they need to learn to know what questions to ask. And see, that's the thing. I didn't even know what questions to ask. And like I said, I just thought I've always been a very independent person. I was like, I'll just deal with it. I'll deal with it when it gets here. And I wish so much that I could have gone back, that I knew then what I know now, and that I could have gone back and helped myself have a better time, because I would have been able to enjoy my life and my time with this brand new baby so much more. So it's essential.
Yeah,
It's essential
totally.
that we just start asking those questions. Yeah. So thank you for asking it.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Oh, how frustrating to get to the other side and say, "Why did no one ask me? Why did no one talk about this?" But I think this is a great step to kind of like, hey, you can ask those questions. And I loved that word. I wrote that down, like advocacy. Like you have to self advocate, unfortunately, right? Like wish it wasn't that way, but definitely be prepared so that you can ask those questions and know what to ask. I think that's great. I did want to circle back a little. You talked about having um, like a before you give birth, having that postpartum plan. And I'm curious what you would say are some, obviously it's going to be personal and tailored to the mother, but what are some key elements that you kind of see being a part of everyone's postpartum plan?
Yeah, great question. So there are a few key elements and for all of us. And so the big ones, of course, are diet, hydration, sleep, exercise, and support. So those are like the five main ones. And within them, there's a lot of nuance, especially with support, right? Like we have to have our family support, our partner support, our people, whoever your people are, you've got to let them really become your support team, right? And you've got to start having those conversations as soon as you can. And then you also need your medical support team. And that includes, your doctors, doulas, midwives, whoever is in the room with you. Some people will get like a pelvic floor physiotherapist, a massage therapist, an acupuncturist. Whoever is on your care team, they're now part of your medical care team. And that goes back to like the medical red flags, like who do you call and when? And that's a big part of like the support postpartum care plan too, because you've got to know when you need support and then who to call. So those are the big ones. And then, again, within like the stress management piece, there's a whole world inside of that too. Addressing your history of like where, why are we stressed? For me, I'm definitely like a type A personality, so I tend towards that, but also like, is there a history of something that might have gone a little bit deeper? Like a lot of us do carry a history of trauma, and maybe that's something that kind of fuels some of the stress. And so there's a lot of nuance in there, and people can take it as deep as they want or keep it as superficial as they want. That's the thing. If it's not something that you feel called to work through, just flip to the next chapter. But
Mm.
those are the 5 essential pieces, and then it gets broken down into more.
Right, right. I love that. What would you say there's like an ideal timeline for when you're kind of planning those things out, right? Because you think about it, like you got 9 months, so I'm sure a lot of the things mothers go, "Oh, I have 9 months," and then it's, "Oh, I'm giving birth."
Totally. Yeah. Honestly, I think that as soon as people can start to find the bandwidth to wrap their heads around this and dive in a little bit, that's the best time. I remember when I was pregnant, I was so excited to do all the things, and for me, all I knew what to do was just, I would hop on the websites and see, oh, what does my baby look like this week? And, what should I be getting for my baby? Like I spent so much time organizing and rearranging this baby registry because, you get all this advice from people about what the baby needs, what the baby needs, what the baby needs. But I think it's really, really important to take a beat and take a breath and say, okay, wait a second. Now is the time where I need to be answering the question, what do I need? So as soon as people can do that in pregnancy, even just take 5 minutes at night before you go to bed and journal, or go for a walk and just let it bounce around in your head, like wherever you can find the time and the space to answer those questions, you should be answering them, because the baby comes and everything changes.
Yeah, totally. Kind of plan for the, you know, unexpected and hard to plan for things.
Yeah. And the thing is too, like it's really an opportunity to deepen our relationships with ourselves. It's
Yeah.
this. I remember, are you a numerology person? Are you into numerology at all?
Not like a ton, no.
Yeah. Yeah. I took this class like years and years ago, and they talked about the number 9 being like the pause, like you breathe in and there's like a pause and then you breathe out. And number 9 is like the pause between breath in and breath out. So I don't know, I've always thought of that, and
Mhm.
I feel like pregnancy is a little bit like that too. It's like this moment in time where things are moving very differently than they ever have and they ever will again. And it's in this strange little like opportunity, if we let it be, to just reflect and make some changes before everything changes again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's like a really cool way to put it, and I haven't heard that before. So I just find that interesting. Definitely something I'll listen back to and yeah, like think about that and
Yeah.
do a little more research into the number 9. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was just something that always stuck with me. I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, one of those facts that you just kind of remember.
Hmm.
Totally. So, going along still kind of with some advice and tips and things that you would recommend um, when you are in the thick of it, and even if you've done your support plan and you have things in place, like it's still going to be hard. There's still going to be challenges. So, how do you I guess, or what advice would you give to kind of get through those mood swings and the imbalances and getting through it other than having your support system, just kind of that day to day?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really where the self-care piece comes in, because there's so many little day-to-day things that affect our mental and emotional health that we can just like completely forget about. I can't tell you how many women have told me, I just forget to drink water.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things that's so it almost sounds too good to be true or too easy to be true, but it's so important. And so there will be mood swings. Things will change. You will be challenged because, you're not sleeping very well, maybe for the first time ever, or, not only are you not sleeping, but there's this brand new creature that you've got to take care of, and there will be challenges and there will be emotions behind that. And so the best things that we can do, whether it's C-section or natural birth, like, you're going to need to recover. So you need to eat, you need to hydrate, you need a break. And whether that looks like somebody coming over to watch the baby so you can nap for an hour, or whether that looks like, going out for a walk or getting a pedicure without the
Yeah.
baby or whatever it is, it's so important to take those moments. And then again, have some patience and some comfort and some grace with yourself. I know that when those like big swings happen, it's not forever. And I think my caveat here is this: there's something called like postpartum baby blues or baby blues, and that's where inevitably, like, as a woman's hormones kind of recover from like the massive shock of being pregnant and then not being pregnant, there are a lot of wild swings, and that's expected to
Mm,
usually last about 2 weeks or so. Sometimes it lasts a little bit longer for women, but the thing that categorizes that is that it resolves, and they don't need any treatment or anything. It resolves without any intervention at all. So it was just her body kind of like getting back to itself. In postpartum depression or anxiety, there is no recovery. Like, she might have like ebbs and flows of her mood, but there's no like wait 2 weeks and then you're feeling better. It's like the symptoms are intense. Maybe they are reminding her of how she used to feel in a different part of her life, but she can't shake them. So there's a big difference there. And so I think it's so important to know that these are two very different experiences that people can have. And of course, they can have both too. But that's why, again, we shouldn't just be kind of trying to like grit our teeth and get through it. Like, if you're really struggling with mood, then definitely talk to somebody. Talk to a safe person first. Tell them how you're feeling. Safe person being like a partner or a parent or a sibling or a
yeah.
best friend. And open up the door for conversation of, should I get, when should I see a mental health professional, or when should I see my doctor? And make sure that that question is in the air and is easily accessible for both of you guys to have that conversation, because the partner or the support person needs to know it's safe to ask those questions just as much as you need them to ask the question. Yeah, totally.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Hadn't really thought about that before either. I think that's great that it's a two-way street, and knowing that both ways are safe and going to be able to ask those questions. I think that's a great reminder. And hearing you talk about the baby blues, I had totally heard of that and just forgotten, like, it had not even thought about it until just now. So I think that is a good reminder too. And uh I liked how you said, like, remembering, like, there is an end, things
Well,
will
and
get
again, like
better.
with postpartum
And
depression and
if they
anxiety, if
don't,
if people aren't
there
feeling
are
any
further
relief,
actions
like,
that can help you get
again, there's
there.
relief from that, whether it's medication or whether it's something else that they want to try first. They need to see a professional at that point if they're just not feeling better, because it's not worth it to try and suffer through. It's just not. You have a baby, you have your own healing, you have your life to get back to, you have these people that love you. Like, your healing matters that much. It matters so much.
Totally. Yeah. So I thought of this question. I'm like, I think Emily will be the best to answer this. I'm curious to know what was like the most surprising
I
thing
think
for
for
you
me, I
becoming
was
a mother
so
and going into motherhood, and you go
worried
into
and
postpartum, and then you
just
kind of get out of that, and I'm sure
always
there's
thinking
lots of
about having
things
this
that were
new little
shocking,
tiny
but I'm
fragile
curious if
baby,
there's one that like stands
and
out
never
more.
myself never having been like a super maternal person, and not I've had a lot of friends who had babies, but I've never been like super called to be around kids. And so there was a lot for me that was like, I had a lot of question marks around, like, how am I going to be as a mom? And the second my kid was born, it was just so natural. I still don't always, I mean, of course I identify as a mom, but like, I identify as a lot of other things too. But the mom thing did come to me so much more naturally than I thought it would. So I think that truly was the biggest surprise. It was that, yeah, there's this like whole capacity for transformation inside of us, and it can happen in a second. Yeah. And we're not even aware.
Yeah. 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 That is a crazy thought. Like,
it was
literally,
wild.
like 1 second, you go from pregnant to now you have a baby. That is kind of a crazy thought. It really is, like, right then, right there, and now it's all changed. And that's really cool. I love it. So I want to end with kind of a lighter, fun question. Do
Definitely.
you
For me,
specifically have
walking
any
has been
like
a
hobbies or
huge,
activities that you
huge,
enjoy
just like
doing that
for my mental
either
health, for
just
my
help you,
physical
you know,
health.
have
It's
some
just been like a game
self-care
changer because it's
or
given me a chance
are
to get away
just
from my computer.
enjoyable
I'm
and
on my
help you
computer too
have a
much,
good day,
but
maybe
just like
unwind,
open my
anything
vision
like
up.
that?
Walking is huge for me. I'm a food lover, so anything that has to do with food, whether it's, cooking or I honestly don't cook as much these days because having a kid, I just feel like I'm super busy, but I still love going out to eat. I love watching cooking shows. I love the Real Housewives. So like sometimes it is about just like being able to hang out in the kitchen, even if I'm not like making anything amazing. At least I'm in there with my kid and we're watching the Real Housewives or something crazy. It's just like a way to step into my everyday and get
Yeah.
some really fun, ridiculous moments.
That's funny. Yeah. No, they're on my like watch list, but I just don't like watch TV that much. I'm more of a movie person. So if I get, an hour or two, I'd rather throw on a movie. So I have a long list of shows that I say I'm gonna watch, but I just don't do. But okay, well, I think that was perfect. I think that there were so many amazing tips that you shared, great advice, great reminders. I know that all of my listeners who either are mothers or plan to be will definitely have learned something. And for anyone interested, it will be linked in the show notes as well. So even more direct, you don't have to remember anything. You can just click on it. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been so lovely having you. I've learned a lot. I'm excited to learn more about the everything postpartum before I get there. I think that's a great kind of resource that you've given to me and anyone else who isn't a mother yet. So I think that's great. And you're doing amazing to kind of bridge that gap of not knowing.
Thanks for listening. Remember to leave a rating and review, subscribe, and come back next Thursday for a new episode. And remember, you matter and what you have to say matters. So join me here with For the Talkers.